There are video games that people look forward to, and once in a while there are those games that people grow up waiting for. The Elder Scrolls 6 sits in that second category, of course. It's not just another sequel, it's the follow-up to Skyrim, a game that didn't just succeed but defined like an entire generation of open-world role-playing games. And obviously, now after years of silence, slow updates, growing anticipation, something has finally shifted. This isn't a distant idea anymore, it's a real project. We've talked about it many times, fully in development, with Bethesda now putting the majority of its focus behind it. For the first time since the original teaser back in 2018, The Elder Scrolls 6 feels like it's actually moving towards something tangible, not fast, not rushed, but real. In fact, Bethesda's confirmed that the game has moved past pre-production and into full development, with most of the studio now actively working on it. And it wasn't even recent, it was a few months ago. That alone tells you something important, which is this is not a concept anymore. In fact, it hasn't been for a while. This is the next world they're preparing. But of course, if you've followed Bethesda long enough, you already know what that really means. This is gonna take time, and you probably should, because the weight behind The Elder Scrolls 6 is unlike anything Bethesda's ever faced before. Skyrim didn't just sell well, it became a platform, a game people still play over a decade later. Mods, re-releases, memes, entire communities just build around it. So when people talk about the next Elder Scrolls game, they're not just asking for a sequel, obviously, they're asking for something that can stand next to one of the most influential games that's ever made. That's not something you rush out of the door, and Bethesda, of course, seems to understand that this time. Todd Howard himself, in fact, has made it pretty clear that there's no rush with this project, which might sound frustrating on surface, but it actually signals something important. After the mixed reception of Starfield, the studio now knows expectations are different. Players aren't just hoping for another Bethesda game, they're expecting evolution. Which is basically where things start to get interesting, because technically, The Elder Scrolls 6 is being built on something new. Not a completely new identity, but a significant upgrade. Bethesda's using Creation Engine 3, which is a major evolution of the technology that powered Skyrim and Starfield. And according to early development updates, this engine has already made a difference behind the scenes, with more stable builds and smoother development compared to the previous projects. Now, this might sound like developer talk, but it matters more than you might think, because Bethesda games live and die by their systems. The way NPCs behave, the way quests unfold through the journey, the way the world reacts to your choices. These are not surface level features, they're the foundation. And if the engine is stronger, more flexible, more stable, then everything built on top of it has the potential to feel more alive. Technically speaking, the real promise of a new Elder Scrolls game. Not just a bigger world, but a smarter one. Bethesda hasn't officially confirmed it, which is basically what everybody wants to know right now. But there has been a long-standing internal consensus on the setting for years, even dating back to Fallout 4 era. Most speculations point toward Hammerfall, possibly combined with High Rock. And if that ends up being true, we think it opens the door to something very different from Skyrim. Deserts, coastal cities, trading hubs, political tension between kingdoms, rather than just isolated survival. A warmer, more vibrant world, but one that still carries the same depth to the lore and the conflict the series is known for. And that shift really matters, because Skyrim was about isolation, harsh climates, survival against the elements. A Hammerfall or High Rock setting would be about culture, power, movements, more populated cities, more factions, more interaction between different regions of the map, which honestly, that alone could redefine how the game feels. Because Bethesda's always build big worlds, but big doesn't really mean the same thing anymore. Players expect density now, not just land, but activity, not just quests, but consequences. And based on what we've seen from industry trends and Bethesda's own evolution, The Elder Scrolls 6 will likely focus more on depth rather than just raw size per se. fewer empty spaces, more meaningful encounters, more systems interacting with each other, more reasons to stay in the world rather than just move through it. And if Bethesda really leans into that, this could be the first Elder Scrolls game where the world doesn't just feel handcrafted, but reactive, where your actions don't just complete quests, but change how the world behaves over time. Now, here's where things get a little grounded. Despite all the progress, this game is still a long way off. Even optimistic estimates place the release somewhere around 2027 or 2028, based on development timelines and Bethesda's own pace, of course. And while that might sound a little long, it also aligns with something else: the next generation of hardware. There's a real possibility that Elder Scrolls 6 becomes a defining game for the next console era. Not just visually, but structurally, a game inspired by game design with fewer limitations, larger systems, more complex interactions. A true step forward, not just a continuation. And that's exactly what it needs to be, because this isn't just about returning to Tamriel, it's about redefining what an open world RPG looks like in modern era. That's right, that means better combat, not necessarily faster or flashy, but more responsive, more weight behind every swing. And maybe most importantly, it means choices that actually matters. Not in a scripted pick A or B way, but in a system-driven way, where the game tracks what you do, how you behave, who you align with, and builds a version of the world around that. That's what Elder Scrolls has always promised: freedom. If this game can deliver that freedom in a way that feels modern, stable, and meaningful, then it won't just live up to Skyrim. It might actually surpass it. But there is also one more layer to this. That is expectations. After Starfield, the conversation around Bethesda's changed. Players started asking harder questions about polish, depth, about whether the studio was evolving or just repeating itself. And The Elder Scrolls 6 is the answer to all of those questions. It's the moment where Bethesda either proves it can still lead the genre or falls behind it, and based on everything we know so far, the studio is aware of that pressure precisely. The decision to take more time, the focus on improving technology, the shift toward full production with most of the team involved, all of it points to a project that's being treated differently, more carefully, more deliberately. Maybe that's exactly what this series really needs. When The Elder Scrolls 6 finally arrives, it won't just be another RPG release, but a moment, a return to a world players have been waiting to step back in for over a decade, and a reminder of why people actually fell in love with Tamriel in the first place. Wide open landscapes, endless choices, stories that don't just belong to the game, but to the player. And somewhere in that world, a path you haven't walked yet, ready and waiting.